Welcome to Forensic Friday.
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. Now, I had the craziest conversation with Garrett this morning, and I want to get your take on it. So, we're talking about mom talk today. We're talking about the Mormon wives
Yes,
and their shenanigans.
it's so insane.
Yeah, so I was trying to finish it up before we hopped on here, and Garrett walked in while I'm watching them at Chippendales. And,
Okay.
and he's like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "Oh, Dad and I are doing a whole episode on this." So then I asked him, I said, "Garrett, would it bother you if I went to Chippendales?" And he was like, "What?" I said, "Would you have a problem with that? Like, would you feel like A, it's disrespectful, or that you wouldn't trust me, or any of that?" And when I tell you, we both started belly laughing because here's the truth. What am I going to do at Chippendales? A, right? Nobody's hooking up with anybody from Chippendales.
Right.
But Gary and I got in this like really technical conversation about performance, like burlesque versus
Oh,
like a someone, you got a crotch in your face kind of strip club. Like there
yes,
is a little
yes,
bit of a distinction there.
yes.
But long story short, Gare, I don't think Gare gives two hoots whether or not I go to Chippendales ever in my life. But I don't think he would love fully if I went to like a male strip club, like a seedy, gross male strip club. But I wouldn't want to
Right.
be there either,
Okay, can I ask a stupid question?
of course.
What is the difference between Chippendales and Magic Mike?
They're like pretty much the same.
Okay,
I think Magic Mike is like based on
Chippendales.
Chippendales. And I
Okay.
gotta say, like, I've seen Magic Mike. Have you?
I haven't seen the movie, but I have a bunch of girlfriends who went to Vegas last year and they saw the show in Vegas.
I can't say I wouldn't go to that show.
I'm saying I'm the same. I would
Okay.
probably go. I
So
would go.
is this now on the bucket list?
Yes, I would
Here
go.
was my question though. What would Preston think about you going to like a Chippendales versus a strip club? Would you care if he went to a strip club?
Oh, absolutely. I'd care if you went to a strip club. I wouldn't go to a strip club though.
Me
And
neither.
I
Not
don't
because we don't
know.
love strippers. I want to go on the record. I love strippers. They are the best clients ever, and I
Yes.
love them, and we're sex positive and all the things, but carry on.
Well, and I do feel like because with Magic Mike, from what they said, is there's no touching.
There's
Like
no
they don't,
touching.
but in Chippendale there was.
Well, technically in Magic Mike, though, I think if you get pulled up on stage, there's touching, but it's not like people in your face all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
See, I
they like pick people up sometimes. Like they do some interesting things.
yeah.
But I
Yeah,
would
I
like
don't
sit in the
know.
back with a real good cocktail and probably watch it go down.
Yeah, that's fine.
That I could
I
do.
don't want to get pulled on stage. I'd be wildly uncomfortable.
I think I would just laugh my ass off. But I'm the type of person they would put on stage just to be funny.
Yeah.
I would be uncomfortable as well.
Yeah.
So you'd have to pry me off the back door probably. But I would be there. I think I would be there. But would Preston care? Would he have an opinion at all if you went to like Magic Mike or something in Vegas? Obviously, a small strip club is different, but like a performance.
Yeah, I don't think he would care.
I don't either.
I don't think he would care. I mean, it's never been like my thing. Like I've never been like, "Ooh, let's like go to a strip
No.
club together." I know there's couples that do that, to each their own.
Yeah.
That's just never been what I would want to do. So I think if I were to say we're gonna go to Magic Mike, he'd be like, "Okay."
There is absolutely no scenario in which I go into a strip club that I don't walk out with five new clients slash friends. There's no
Right.
way that doesn't happen
I mean, we would
because
just have to bring our cards.
yes,
And that would be we would tip with money and cards.
there you go. Because you got to give them their money because those girls, man, they are making their
Yes.
money. And I got no problem with the fact that for some women, they feel like they cannot survive without doing something like this. And then there's also trauma reenactment and all the things. So I have actually endless compassion. I've worked for a couple, or worked for, not for, with a few porn stars as well. and have
Hmm.
really talked with them about how they got into it. And there's always a backstory.
Oh, for sure.
Nobody's like, I think first choice, this is all I've ever wanted to do with my life. And so,
Right.
but is it a double standard? Because I wouldn't care. I'm not going to be jealous. And I wouldn't care if my husband went to like a show, like a burlesque type show. I would prefer that I was there.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather go with him. But if it was a
Yeah.
big show, I wouldn't feel as weird about it.
Yeah. I think it just depends on the situation. And
Yeah,
each human's different. You know what I mean? Like
that's true.
your own self boundaries, like if someone maybe has a sex addiction or a porn addiction, that wouldn't be like the first place I would say, like, hey, you should go there.
Oh, 100%.
Similar to like individuals with alcohol addiction, like don't go to a bar, you
No,
know?
it's so true. I
So
think
it's
you're
like
right.
I think it just depends on the person and how self-aware you are of what you should or shouldn't be doing based on your own genetic makeup.
And none of it's necessary, right? I always say this about alcohol, and people are like, I can't believe I can't drink. I'm like, well, okay. It's not oxygen, right? Like, we don't actually need
It's
this
not
thing.
food, like, it's not like vegetables.
Well, and this is the thing with eating disorders, those folks actually have to figure out how to manage something that they need to survive, which is one of the reasons it's so difficult to treat. This is not that hard to avoid if you decide to avoid it.
No.
Porn's a little different because you're on the internet and there's stuff everywhere, but you can make a rational choice about whether or not to go into this kind of situation.
Right, right.
You know?
Like, you don't have to go to a show if that's something you struggle with.
No.
Thankfully, it's never been something that I've particularly had an issue with, so going to something like Magic Mike, I think I would just laugh the whole time.
The level at which we would laugh. I mean, I would pee my pants for certain.
I know.
For certain.
So
Can
it would
you
be so
imagine?
funny.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, we're gonna get into the whole mom talk debacle. Introduce it, Nat.
Yeah. So the mom talk debacle, I think it's still trending. The Hulu series
Mm-hmm.
on it, which is hold on, what's it called? The Secret Life
Of
of
Mormon
Mormon
wives.
Wives.
Yeah.
And so I saw this on Friday and I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know if I want to watch this. And then I started watching it and I have seen the whole season one now.
Oh, I'm almost done. I'm up
It's
through episode 7, I think.
so have they not gone to the skating rink yet?
Mm-mm. I haven't seen the skating rink yet. You'll have to tell me what happens.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, it's a whole thing. So I started watching this and I was like, we should do an episode on this, even though there is a part component of it that has a crime. So we're going to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But it lines up with so many other things that we've been talking about.
Purity culture, kind of this niche subculture stuff.
Yes.
I was also thinking about how weird it is that it's geographically centralized to a degree. So there are Mormons everywhere. I know this, like I'm not an idiot, but
Hmm.
I can't think of like where's the Christian Mecca in the US, right? I mean, Colorado Springs, maybe. But
Right.
in Utah, it's so centralized and there's laws around it. I can't think of anywhere else in the country or any other religion in the country that's like quite that localized. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Well, and I watched Real Housewives of Salt Lake City for a while, which was also insane, but had a lot of similar tensions. People who were still in the church, people who were out of the church, trying to navigate if they can go to each other's events based on it. It's like a whole thing.
Right.
And that I find kind of fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, when we went to Zion, their rules around like alcohol and drinking is way different than anywhere else in the US.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty wild. And I can't remember how to put this. Their liquor stores are federally owned.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's not like a liquor store that's like owned by anyone in Utah. It's so
It,
weird. And they're
so
like
does
the
the state
weirdest.
not get any revenue then from alcohol sales?
I don't think so.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Maybe it does. Maybe it's state. I don't know, but I could be wrong. Also, you can't have an alcoholic beverage without food
Oh, that's so interesting.
in Utah.
I
Yeah.
wonder what the thought process is on that. Like maybe you're less likely to be abusing it if you're having it like with dinner.
Well, it helps like soak it up. It helps, like if you have no food and then you drink, you have, you get drunker quicker versus if you have food. It's a slower drunk.
I love that you just said soak it up.
It does.
Can we talk about soaking for 5 seconds? You know what soaking is, right?
What do you mean?
Oh, you don't know what this is. I'm so happy I'm the one who gets to tell you what this is.
Soaking.
Okay.
Okay, go. What is it?
Okay, so Mormon, kids, right? Like teenagers,
Uh-huh.
early adolescents, they're usually married by 23. So, somewhere in there. They do this thing called soaking because they are not allowed to technically have sex.
Are you sure it's called soaking?
Positive. Positive,
Okay.
it's called soaking. So they will literally assume the position, full contact, and then have a roommate or someone jump on the bed to create the movement so that it's like okay.
Shut up.
I'm not kidding you. It's a real thing.
Oh, I can't. That's so
I can't believe you
disturbing.
didn't know what this is.
I've heard of that, the concept,
Yes.
when talking about Mormonism, but I didn't know what the term was.
Okay, so here's an article I just pulled up. BYU students are soaking up loopholes.
Shut up. I
A
cannot.
penis just chills in a vagina without movement.
And then someone else jumps on the bed.
Sometimes, yes. So sometimes they just stay and they don't count it as sex. Okay. Which how fun is sex without movement? That doesn't sound that's not sex, but whatever. They will do that. Okay. No
Okay.
moving, no thrusting, no orgasms. That's the boundary. But what they will do is have someone come like jump on the bed and then there's movement that they didn't cause. So it's like they're not breaking the rule.
That is so dumb. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
But it's real. It's like it's a real thing.
That is the dumbest thing ever.
Yep. Yep. Isn't
Okay.
that crazy?
Yes.
So on that awkward note,
Gross.
you look so grossed out right now.
I am grossed out. Well, I'm just thinking, I'm like, so there has to be a third party,
Yes.
which is also just wildly uncomfortable, which gets us into some of this episode
I
or
can think.
this freaking show.
That's
Okay.
right.
So we're going to start from the beginning of this show, which starts with Taylor.
Yes.
Okay. I'll be honest. Taylor, at the beginning, I was like, this is going to be a train wreck.
Well, and I fully expected to not like her at all.
Same. I hated her
Yeah,
the first episode.
same. And even like I had heard only little bits here and there about
Yep.
there's this Mormon chick on TikTok who was swinging,
And
came
then
out
had a
with it
DV.
and had a DV, but I didn't know anything about her. So, but I just was already kind of like, she's a clout chaser, and I just didn't think I was
Yep.
gonna like her at all.
Yep. Same. So that's how I felt. And just her like such lack of self-awareness.
Yes.
Like one of the things that I wrote down was it can be scary and we can really hurt other people when we are that unaware of ourselves.
Yes.
And that's what happened.
Yep.
Right. So her
Yep.
story in a nutshell is she and her TikTok mom friends, but not everyone was involved. That's the other thing.
Yep.
And it never gets into who was and who wasn't
No.
involved in this
Mm-mm.
besides her. So she basically takes all the blame.
Right.
So she gets involved with this quote unquote soft swinging
Yes.
situation that I believe her and her husband started,
That tracks.
ex-husband.
And she's kind of a boundaryless person. Like you said, she doesn't have good self-awareness, but she's
Mhm.
also all over everybody else. Like she's just,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. So this is how this is starting. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is going to be such a shit show. So,
I know.
so I'm watching this whole thing unfold. She's, so where the show starts is she is divorced or she's divorcing her husband. They have two kids together. because she ended up stepping out of the soft swinging boundaries and had an affair. Okay, that's like public knowledge.
And the affair was not with current boyfriend. It was
It
with
was
somebody
not
else.
with her current boyfriend.
Yep.
It was with someone else's husband.
Yep.
So that happened. Fast forward now, so she has this boyfriend kind of
Mhm.
at the beginning. Like they're like kind of dating, kind of not dating.
Yeah.
And he's like obsessed with her, which is like it's okay to be very in love and infatuated with your partner, but to
Yeah.
be so obsessed is actually a red flag.
Well, it's love bomby. It feels
Yes.
love bomby. And they met on Instagram. So he DM'd her, she DM'd him back.
Yes. Yeah, they met on Instagram. He was actually an addict, an overdose at one point on fentanyl.
Mm.
So, yeah, love bombing, trauma bonding, or love bombing, trauma bonding, all of that was happening.
And his name is Dakota.
His name is Dakota, and
And we're
he's,
going to need his name because we have opinions later.
oh, yeah, he's a trip.
Mm-hmm.
So, she's dating Dakota. She is pregnant, like four
Yeah.
weeks pregnant, and then miscarries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she's also still living this like kind of wild party lifestyle at this point.
Yep.
And the dude, and I'll give Dakota kudos to this. He's sober.
Yeah, he is sober.
He's
Yep.
sober. So he doesn't engage in drinking with her or anything like that.
Mm-mm.
But one night, and she even says it in the show, she's like, I'm gonna get drunk tonight. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going hard tonight. And she ends up losing her mind.
And she's obliterated.
Hammered.
Yeah.
I mean, the camera footage, the police
Mm.
footage, poor girl. I just was sitting there and was like, oh my gosh,
And she's
she's
just sobbing.
miserable,
Like it's so sad.
sobbing.
Yeah.
So I know you and I both have opinions on this. So we're going to push pause right here in this situation with her where she's sobbing. She gets arrested for domestic violence. Okay. She comes back. Episode 2 starts like, I want to say months later.
Yeah, there's definitely like time gaps where like an episode is a few months forward, like
But I
fast
think
forward.
that was the biggest time gap one.
Probably.
Was from episode 1 to 2
Yeah,
because she had to do therapy. I mean, she had to do the whole 9 yards of DV treatment.
that's true.
And she was like super pregnant at that point.
Mm,
So she's pregnant with her second baby because the first one miscarried
yeah.
with Dakota. So we'll push pause here because when she comes back, different girl.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think for you, Janine? And I have so many things written down about this.
Yeah.
What do you think before we saw her in episode 2?
Yeah.
Why do you think she lost her mind? Everyone always wants to say, well, it's alcohol and we don't do blah, blah, blah. We meet a lot of happy drunks.
Absolutely.
Why do you think she lost her mind?
I have a couple of theories. I think she has some underlying mental health stuff potentially. I don't know her, I've never treated her, whatever, but there's some underlying something.
Hmm.
I think that what they all went through as a group
Hmm.
was pretty traumatic. And I think when she came out and made the video about how there was all this swinging happening, she
Hmm.
didn't throw anyone under the bus, but she also didn't protect anyone. So she basically
Right.
said, everybody's hooking up with everybody. So
Yep.
it blew up this entire friend group. It put a lot of shade on everybody's marriages.
Yep.
And, the guy that she stepped out on her husband with, they didn't even end up together. So I
Yep.
think this Dakota guy showed up and he's love bomby and everything else, but he's also pretty mean,
Yeah.
objectively mean in
Hmm.
some of the scenes. And so I think she was taking stock of her whole life. She's pregnant again. She's, because was she pregnant when the DV
No, she had miscarried.
she had miscarried? So okay, so that's another piece. Women don't process miscarriages super well. Men don't either.
Hmm.
Men don't either. It's really hard on a couple.
Hmm.
And men typically grieve differently than women. It's a whole thing. And he doesn't
Yep.
have other kids, I don't think.
No.
So this would have been his first child. So I think there were a lot of emotions involved, and then you throw some alcohol in there too. And
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
they were ripe for something to happen.
Oh, for sure. I totally agree with that. I think potentially some mental health stuff, but with how together she gets it
Hmm.
after is interesting, which we'll get into. But I actually think when I think of, soft swinging, you're in this Mormon religion, there's all
Yeah.
these expectations on you, right? And you've heard me use this term before.
Yeah.
I think that was a moral injury for her.
Mm.
I
Okay,
think
tell them what a
she,
moral injury is, Nat.
well, a moral injury is it's kind of similar, it sits in our bodies similarly to trauma. So a
Mhm.
moral injury is when we do something so outside of who we are that it's hard for us to come back from emotionally
And make sense of it.
and make sense of it. So similar to trauma, we like individuals will cope super differently. Addictions come from this, right? Like
Hmm.
there's moral injuries again stick like similarly to trauma.
Yeah.
So I think she had a moral injury. I think this whole
Mm.
situation, right? They get married so young
Yeah.
and no one, and people are going to have their opinions. Okay, I'm going to just name the thing. I
Yeah.
am a monogamous human.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I love my husband. I
Yep.
didn't get married until almost 30,
Yep.
right? So I waited. And I do think when you start in a monogamous relationship and then you're like, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's spice it up a little and do this swinging
Mm.
thing or have an open relationship or bring someone else into the bedroom. That's not normally because you're really happy.
True story. And it's
You
also
know?
interesting that you say that because I've counseled when it comes to polyamory, that kind of thing. I've counseled the other person, so like the third person who might come in. And
Yeah.
what was so fascinating, I've worked with two or three folks who've served that role in relationships.
Yeah.
They are universally the folks I've worked with, codependent to a degree.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They are very forthright about boundaries and navigating things within the relationship, which is really interesting. Like they have very honest conversations typically.
Yep.
But what's interesting on the codependency level is some of the folks I've worked with, they feel like they're helping the relationship. So there's this almost like a I'm giving this to this person,
Yep.
which is different than we're all rebelling and there's this line and we're seeing
Yep.
how close we can get to the line, which is a
Yep.
little bit more what this situation was.
Yes, exactly. So I think she had this big moral injury. I think in the first episode, why you and I didn't like her so much is because the whole time
Mm,
she is just layering
yeah,
defense after defense after defense,
yeah,
right? Like that whole idea of
yeah,
I don't give a shit about what people think.
yep,
I did what I did, so what?
yep.
Right? There was all of that. Like it is what it is. And that, yeah, I'm like she even
Mm,
jokes to Dakota, I'm this, soft swinger Mormon mom, whatever.
mm,
So it's this idea of like, I don't actually care what people think. I
right.
do what I do, whatever.
Yeah.
When in reality, the people who are like that are hurting the most.
So true. And her mom is so mean too. Can
Her
we just talk
mom's
about her mom for a
awful to
minute?
her.
And so judgmental and so mean.
Yes.
So if I'm her,
I mean, her
like,
mom
that's
literally was
miserable.
like, you embarrass this family.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's take all of that and then you add alcohol to the mix. And what does alcohol do? It usually brings our true emotions to the forefront.
It's an accelerant at least.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So she loses her mind.
Mm-hmm.
She's throwing chairs.
Mm.
One almost, I think, almost hits her kid. I don't know if it actually hit her kid.
There were child abuse charges. I know that because I
Yep.
saw that.
Yep.
I don't know that anything hit the children, but the children were present, which
They were there.
that
Yeah.
is child abuse and it is reportable,
Oh, 100%.
you know?
And she got arrested,
Mm.
and I think it was the best thing that happened to her.
Yeah, I think so too.
which is interesting because you and I sometimes work with people
Hmm.
who say that. They'll say this was the best thing that could have happened to
I
me.
actually think wouldn't you say most of our clients at the end of the process are like,
Yeah.
I needed something to change at least,
Yep.
and I
Yep.
wouldn't have done it on my own.
Yep. So that was the offense, right? That's the crime that is involved in this, which is her domestic violence charge.
Yep.
Fast forward to episode 2. She is just a different human.
Yeah, she is.
And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I kind of like her. I was
I
watching
could
it with
maybe get
my,
on board with her.
yeah, I was watching it with my sister-in-law, Arliss.
Yeah.
And her and I both were just like, okay, we like Taylor.
Oh, yes.
Like, this is a good thing.
And she immediately was observing more and actually owned some of her stuff to her friends. Like she
Oh,
was able to say,
she owned all of it.
what was it she said to Whitney at one point? She said, I really hurt you. You're
Yes,
really angry because I really hurt you. And I was like, oh, if I could put that in a bottle and sell it. Like
I know.
that's it. That's
I mean,
accountability.
Whitney's just the
I
worst.
can't with Whitney.
Oh,
We're gonna get to that, but she makes
I
me
just can't with
so
her.
mad. Oh.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, so fast forward again, episode 2, she's owning her. She actually owns all of it. I actually think she owned probably more than she needed to.
I would agree with that actually. Yeah.
I think there was a lot of things, she didn't throw anyone under the bus.
Mm-mm.
Every mom in that group, besides her, denied being a part of the swinging thing.
Right.
So,
And we know, listen, she literally, Taylor said, everybody was messing with everybody. They
yep,
have a content creator house that they're all at all the time,
yep,
and they're having these big parties.
yep.
I'm sorry, ladies. Okay. But a few of these other couples are involved, not all of them.
Oh,
I don't think all of them, but there's a few.
yes,
Just
yes.
saying.
So she's also pregnant again with Dakota's kid, and she's like super pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
right? But she makes this really cool shift, I think, where she goes from like really not knowing what boundaries are, not taking any accountability to being accountable and also setting boundaries. So I think
Mm-hmm.
throughout the whole season, right, the biggest fight between her and Dakota is that she won't marry him.
Yep. Partially
Because,
because he damaged trust with her in the beginning of their relationship.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Hmm. Which good for her.
I know, dude. Like, I'm like, you set the boundary. You said, I'm not ready to get married again.
Mm-mm.
I'm not going to get married just because we're having a kid together because she doesn't want to go through another divorce.
Exactly.
That makes sense to me. She's actually being smart.
Same. I agree.
And what's hard in that religion, her mom gets all mad at her because she's like, well, I just wish you would have thought of all this before. And I'm like, okay, thank you, mom.
Captain Obvious.
Right. Like they didn't plan to get pregnant,
Mm-mm.
So it's like they're doing the best they can with where they're at. And you should applaud your daughter for holding a boundary and saying, I don't want to get married right now.
Yes.
So,
Mm-hmm.
any thoughts from you on the whole Dakota thing?
She said, okay, when she got arrested,
Mhm.
she made the comment that he was being aggressive and she was obliterated. I absolutely believe that she was inappropriate in that situation. And she admitted throwing things and whatever.
Yeah.
He is so physically angry when he gets angry that it is very hard for me to imagine that he was just being totally chill and she started throwing things at him. I don't believe that. I think they were fighting. I don't know that he did anything physical to her or not, but I believe he's aggressive in his posture and his tone because
Oh,
he's
yeah.
shown that over and over again. So I
Yes.
just wanted to mention that I don't think she was drinking and came in and just started throwing stuff at him. There was more going on there for sure.
For sure.
And we should probably specify, we didn't say like what soft swinging is, or are you getting into that?
Oh no, you should share that.
So what they define soft swinging as was everything but intercourse. So basically they would engage in sex acts right in front of each other, but the line was you're not supposed to have full intercourse sex with anybody else. That was the
Right.
line. So
Yep.
that's why they call it soft swinging. And so the way that
But
Taylor
it's like
blew that up
everything else.
was she had a full affair with another husband in the group. I don't know if they hooked up one time or multiple times. It sounded like maybe one time.
Yeah. I do think with her DV, I think she was the primary aggressor.
Yeah, it sounds that way.
And I think I could picture this. I could picture because when Dakota has it his way, things are fine,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
right? So I could picture she probably started it because she's hammered
Oh, hammered. Yes.
and she is spicy as all get out.
Yeah.
So I would guess she started it. I just
Yeah. Oh,
would,
yeah.
right? I don't think he would have started it. He was sober. Not that I
Yeah.
don't think he starts other fights. I think he's a total idiot sometimes.
Oh, he's a pot stirrer.
Yes, but I actually believe that he didn't start it with this situation.
Yeah.
I believe that she probably did, and he doesn't know how to handle himself
I would agree with that.
because as the show goes on, it shows very clearly that he does not know how to address conflict, take accountability,
Yes.
anything.
Well, and what I would say to our listeners, and this is something you and I have talked about a million times, anytime you decide to drink beyond a certain point, which is typically that line between 2 and 3 drinks,
Hmm.
you are taking a risk in your relationship. Even if you're a happy drunk, it doesn't matter. You're
Yep,
literally your brain is starting to disconnect from the rest of you, and you have the potential to damage your relationship, to get arrested, to whatever. So you just kind of have to know that, and then you make decisions to protect your relationship or not.
exactly. So let's talk about Dakota for a little bit.
Absolutely, I'm all about it.
What is your immediate thought when you think of him?
Cool.
Cool.
Tool.
Oh, tool.
Well,
I
I
was like,
thought that
wait.
about Zach. Actually, I think Zach's a tool. Dakota is actually in some ways worse. He's more manipulative.
Hmm.
So Zach is in your face aggressive if you don't do what he wants you to do. Like he was so mean to Jen and didn't even try to hide it, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah.
The DV dynamics in this group are aplenty.
Insane.
There's a lot of this, and it comes from patriarchy,
Yep.
sure, all of it. Dakota, I think he saw, and again, we don't know them. This is all speculation. She's beautiful.
Yep.
She does all these like tongue-in-cheek little posts where she's being like super sexy, but then also kind of repressed Mormon girl, which I don't know. That's a thing, right? And so I think he was super interested in her. We know he hit her up in her DMs on Instagram. She's in a super vulnerable place. She gets with him. And so I think he really wants to be with her. I just don't know fully why. And she is a little bit self-shamey by the second episode where she's sort of like, I have a history, I have a past, I have kids. Like he knows I come with all this baggage. And I'm like, Dakota like is baggage. Like tuck him under your arm along
He's
with
an
your
extra
suitcase.
bag.
He's an extra bag. Like, let's be
Yes.
real, right?
Yes.
And I don't think she sees that at all. I think she feels like he came into her life as this like great thing, and
Mhm.
I don't see it that way.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. I think Dakota, I have two floating opinions about him. One of them is similar to yours in that he's a massive child.
Oh, he's a man
He
child.
he's literally a man child.
Hmm.
He gets addressed by something he did, and it's like an adult temper tantrum that he has.
Immediate deflection.
Yes.
He gets
Defensiveness.
big. He practically
Yeah,
stomps his foot.
literally. So my opinion on him, but then I also go to this idea that he was an addict, right? And we both know that addicts usually love really hard. They have no boundaries.
Well, and he does have emotions. So this is not like a psychopathic human, right? So
No.
I actually think, and you tell me what you think, I think Dakota would do well in treatment.
Absolutely. He'd be one of my favorites.
He'd be one of our favorites,
Hmm. And he would want,
and he would want to get better.
he seems like he wants to be better. He just doesn't know how to do it.
He also could hit her if he gets mad enough. So I want to be real clear.
100%.
His physical escalation is actually pretty dangerous. Also, he can kind of come down and access his emotions, and I think he does regret when he treats her poorly.
He does. Because he circles back and does that. But
Yes.
she names, even like early on, she names, we are in a cycle. We are in a really bad
Yes, he
cycle.
did say that. I remember that now.
Yep. And she said it too. But yes, he goes, this is our cycle.
Yep.
So, so I have the softer spot for Dakota than I do
Yes.
for Zach. I think Zach's just a total dick.
We would fight with Zach immediately. It's an immediate
Absolutely.
no for me. He's going to be getting some individual attention and therapy
Yeah.
because he would blow a group up because he thinks he
Yep.
knows everything and he should be in
Everything.
charge of everything. He would
Yes.
hate having a female facilitator. He would
Yep.
probably fundamentally oppose
Yes.
having a female
The
facilitator.
misogyny with him is so much louder than with Dakota. I don't actually feel like Dakota, I don't think his power and control comes from the
Mm-mm.
religion
I don't either.
or from that kind of dynamic. I think his
Mm-mm.
comes from pure attachment
Oh,
style.
it's desperation to
Yes.
keep her.
Yes. Yes.
Desperation.
Because of that
Zach is
obsessiveness.
control.
Yes. Yep. So Dakota throws these tantrums because he's so in love with her. He's so obsessed with her. He doesn't
Yeah.
want to lose her. He doesn't want to lose his family.
Yes.
And that's why his control comes out. And Zach's is total deep. It's total misogynistic. It's
Well, let's tell them who Zach and Jen are.
okay, you share that.
Okay. So Jen is a little bit younger. So there's kind of two gaggles of the girls. There's like the early 20s and then like the pushing 30. That's kind of the
Yep.
divide.
Yep.
Jen got married at 20. She's 23 or 24 now.
Hmm.
She has one kiddo, one.
Two.
She has two kiddos, and she's married to this man, Zach. Zach is 28. He's in medical school.
Hmm.
And this mom talk that they all created, Taylor took kind of point on it, but they all
Yep.
created this brand of TikTok
Yep.
entertainment together.
Yep.
Zach has been benefiting from Jen's participation in this group because it is literally paying the bills. She's the breadwinner,
Yes.
and he beats her up for it, not physically that I know of, although it's
Right.
not hard to imagine. Um, he's emotionally beaten her up for being a part of this group that's paying their bills while he goes to medical school. So
Hmm.
that's the first thing you
Hmm.
see, and then they do their baby blessing, and he won't let they have the sinners and
And
the
the saints.
saints within the group. So there's some that are more Mormon than others, and they talk about the Mormon scale, which is
Yep.
wild to me.
That was
But
hilarious.
I can relate to this from an evangelical Christian upbringing where,
Hmm.
sometimes this sort of mean girl, where are we on
Hmm.
the whatever, and then we're being
Yep.
low key sexy, all the
How
things.
holy are we?
I can
Whatever.
relate to a lot of these things, but Jen is one of the more buttoned up cast members. She's probably the most Mormon or one of the quote unquote most Mormon.
Yep.
She wears the undergarment, she does all of those things. And so when he goes in on her, she will kind of acquiesce to him because he's a
Hmm.
big, big, big voice. And he doesn't want the quote unquote sinner girls in the group to come to her baby blessing. So that's
Yep.
also one of the first things that happens.
Yes. So super controlling.
Yeah, Zach's a tool.
Oh, he's terrible. And at the end, I don't know if you caught this when they were in Vegas. So okay, so y'all picture this. They're in Vegas. They go, we were just joking about this, the
Yep.
Chippendale show, whatever. So they go to this Chippendale show. Jen is very, like, visibly very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
She's very worried about what Zach's gonna think, this whole
Yeah.
thing.
And I think she's uncomfortable for herself too, a little bit, but
Yeah.
also for her husband.
Yes. So she's in tears. He is ripping her a new butthole.
Oh,
I mean,
oh, horrible.
just awful, saying horrible things like, you're questioning her character, questioning her as a mom, all
We're
this stuff.
done, threatening divorce. I mean, all of it.
Yes. Meanwhile, he's out gambling.
Oh yeah, he has a little bit of a low-key gambling addiction.
He does. Well, so I don't know if you caught this. His parents, when he decided to go to medical school, gave them a bunch of money to try to support them, and he blew through it.
Oh, I missed that.
Yes.
Oh, geez.
Yes.
Oh,
So he blows through this money that his parents give them, gambling
oh.
and just spending it. And so she's keeping them afloat. She's
With this
literally
thing
the
that he then
breadwinner.
beats her up for.
Yeah. She's literally, and the other piece of that is he's so insecure about it that he emotionally abuses her about being the breadwinner.
Absolutely.
It's like, dude, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
No, it's an absolute cluster mentally for her because she
Yes.
she has to be this way. And she'll joke occasionally, but it's like a thin joke.
Mm-hmm.
Or she'll say things like, even when he gets out of medical school, I'll still be making more money than him. Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
there is a fighter in her, but it's really repressed. And I
Mm-hmm.
I think they're at significant risk for DV if there hasn't already been some shenanigans going on.
Yes, yes. Well, and it's interesting. We're kind of all over the place, guys. Sorry, but it's interesting with them. So this is, you probably saw this part too, because I think this was in the same one as the Vegas thing. But they all sit down and the poor girl, they all like, they don't like try to beat her up, but they were like going hard on Zach
Oh yeah.
and just like really letting her know what they thought about that whole situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, so they get into this whole thing where one of the ladies says, "You wouldn't have gotten it over so fast if this didn't happen a lot."
Mm,
So the fact that they were good the next day after him exploding
mm.
means that that happens pretty often because then, he comes back, he goes, "Sorry I treated you like that, blah, blah, blah." And what does she do? She's going to forgive him.
Well, and you know what that apology looks like is kind of like, I'm sorry I get so mad. I'm just quote unquote protective or being the head of our family or blah blah blah. Here's the thing about the protective, because this is something Taylor says, because three of the women leave Chippendales.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually respect that Jen left because I don't think Jen was comfortable with it for herself either.
Mm.
So she needed to go home because she wasn't feeling comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor's super pregnant, not a pregnant girl's place to be. She's kind of out of it anyway. She doesn't feel great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other one was maybe Macy. I don't know. One of them went home,
No, it wasn't Macy. I can't remember her name.
but there was a third one and they leave. They
Yep.
literally leave. Like she went in and she left before the men even got on the stage. Jen
Yep.
was out, like she
Yep.
left. But this whole idea of them being protective, that is not protective. That is jealous and controlling.
Yep.
It's not protective,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
So anyway,
Yeah.
that's one of my soapbox things. That's very much a subculture thing.
It is. Well, yeah. And it's like if you're going to be protective, that looks way different than saying, "Oh, well, I just don't, I trust you. I just don't trust other people." No, that's jealousy, my friend.
How about you protect your family by not gambling? And if you're not okay with what your wife is doing, maybe reevaluate your career plan so she doesn't have to float your boat since you spent all the money. I'm just saying, if I had
Preach.
an earbud, we would just light him up. I'm telling you right now.
Preach. So it is interesting because you were saying Jen does have this like awareness to her
Hmm.
where she says, "I now have a voice," because she is the breadwinner. So
Yep.
she says, "I now have a voice and it brings this narcissistic side of him because he feels like he does not have control."
Which is super insightful because she gives him an allowance to gamble. She's like, I gave you $2,500. And I was like, oh, I see you.
Hmm.
You're controlling the money, which is I would not expect. So
Hmm.
I do think he's had to at least wrap his head around the fact that he spent all that money.
But that's what makes him mad. And that's what she says. Like
Well, he's so
this
mad.
part of him comes out because she's in more control of that now,
Yes.
you know? Yeah, she also says that he has these narcissistic traits about him, and they come out in situations like this every few months.
Mm.
But who's to say in another marriage that won't be the same thing? That's literally like saying, stick with
Hmm.
the devil you know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it sucks because in this culture, what it
Yeah.
seems like in the Mormon culture, it's like, okay, yeah, he's like this, but like, who's to say no one else, everyone's going to be like this. This is our culture.
Well, and this is the other piece too, and I've counseled some Mormon couples. I'm thinking of a few in particular years ago. And one of the places where Mormonism and Christianity are different is how the afterlife works in those two
Mhm.
different religious traditions. And so I'm not trying to be an expert in Mormonism. I don't know a ton, but I will tell you there's a tremendous fear that if we don't stay together or if we're sinning or drinking or doing any of those things, we may not get to spend eternity together.
Yep.
So the stakes are really, really high. They're high in Christianity in the sense that you got like the fire and brimstone Christianity things sometimes where it's like you're going to heaven or hell, but it's not usually like you won't be with your family eternally if you make XYZ mistakes. And divorce would likely be one of those. So some of the women in this group are like, yeah, one throws a party. She's divorced at what, 23, 24, Layla,
Hmm.
and she throws a party about it and is fine with it. But I see the tension in Jen, a little bit in Taylor, especially with her mom, because her mom brings up the bishop. Have you talked to the bishop? Have you? And this is the other thing I don't know that people know about Mormonism unless you know people who are Mormon.
Hmm.
The bishop takes a way more hands-on role than like a pastor does, and
Right.
you're expected to live a certain way to go into the temple. You're not really supposed to be doing all this crap over here and then going into the temple. So when they have weddings, baptisms, funerals, like those kinds of things, you're really supposed to sort of be in line with the faith to go into the temple for those things. So sometimes
Right.
when a Mormon embraces some of these other behaviors, they may not be able to go with their family to a wedding or attend a funeral or whatever. They can get cut off from their temple by the
Yep.
bishop or archbishop or whatever. So there's a lot of pressure that they didn't go into a lot of details on the show, but I think maybe play a role
Yep.
in some
Yep.
of these gender dynamics and
Yes.
marital dynamics.
Absolutely. Yep. So it's it was honestly hard to watch, and like you were saying, like, well, what's interesting, sorry, I feel like my brain's all over the place now. What's interesting is part of this, like, so like there's a couple girls, so Demi and Jessie. Okay.
Yep,
At the very beginning of the show, I like could not figure like pick them apart because they look similar.
they do. Yeah.
But both of them, but Jessie in particularly,
Mhm.
makes a lot of statements around we are trying to break these norms,
Yes.
which is, in my opinion, really brave.
Brave and also, depending on who you talk to, sacrilegious, right?
Exactly.
So it really
Exactly.
depends because if I'm a Mormon, I
Hmm.
might say, "Hey, Jesse, go do you, boo, but don't pretend you're Mormon,"
Right.
right? But she is definitely somebody who, I mean, she's in full glam at all times. She's an excellent hairstylist. I'd love for her to do
Yes.
my hair.
Yes.
But I really can see that now, and I tend to agree coming from a
Mhm.
little bit more of a repressed subculture.
Yep.
But if I'm like Susie Q, Mormon girl, I'm going to look at her and be like, nobody's telling you you have to do this. You just can't do that and be Mormon. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Right. But that's the hard thing, right? And like
I
kind of
know.
like what you were saying with the Christian culture,
Yep.
right? It's like there are parts of the Christian culture, there are different denominations, there's different
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
that tend to err on that side of like that
Yes.
strict, similar to Mormonism.
Yes.
But there's plenty of us who are very reformed,
Yes.
right? So I think that's what they're trying to do in Mormon religion is some of these individuals, and not just these women, but in general,
Yes.
are trying to bring some flexibility to the religion, and it's getting fought with so hard.
Well, because it's similar in Christian culture where we have this concept of grace. So
Yes.
if there's grace, then I can make mistakes and I'm still forgiven. I would say both religions at the core would have an issue with somebody who chooses to do those things over and over again,
Right.
which is kind of the catch 22 of
Yep.
deciding what you believe. Am I
Yep.
in line with this thing or not? But in Christian culture, there's a bigger spectrum, I think, in
Yep.
what's considered quote unquote acceptable.
Yep.
Because we have so many non-denominational churches, which it's fine. Like it's all fine. I don't have an issue with any of that.
Yep.
But it's a little easier to exist on a spectrum, I think, in Christianity than Mormonism.
Yep.
And
Yes,
I'm
I agree
wondering if
with
some
that.
of it's the grace piece.
Well, they also believe in Jesus. They just have this extra situation with Joseph Smith, which is a whole nother thing.
Extra situation.
And I actually know quite a bit about Mormonism. It used to be my college thing to talk to them
You
quite
know
a bit.
that?
Oh my gosh, Janine, it was like this
Oh,
really
I
bad
bet you have
discussion.
some stories.
I do. I had a Mormon one time because if you tell them, hey, I don't want to talk about this anymore, they're not allowed to like continue to keep trying to talk to you.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So that happened to me because this guy, he was actually really nice. This guy and his friends, they had a friend of mine had converted, and I just wanted to understand it. I
Yeah,
just wanted to build a better understanding as to like what's the appeal, enlighten
yeah,
me. But I'm also going to do my research and I'm going to come full-fledged with like what I've looked at.
yeah.
And by the end, I felt a little bad.
Mm,
By the end, the guy was like, "Hey, so you're actually you come with a lot of points
hmm.
and things that are hard to explain in the Mormon religion."
Yeah.
And he said, "And because of that, I'm going to actually have to stop talking to you because I'm questioning my own Mormon faith."
Oh,
And I was like, that wasn't my intention,
no, I'm so
but
sorry. I ruined your day. I didn't mean
I
to.
know. I was like, I just was asking all the questions. Like, I don't believe everything I hear. I have to look it up,
No.
So anyway, that's a whole side story. That's a whole story for a different day. But I do think that they're trying to figure out what this looks like, what living
Yes.
in the gray looks like.
Yes.
And for some of them, it's a little bit easier, and for some of them, it's really hard. And that's okay. And that's what I actually love about this group is
Yeah.
kind of after Whitney got her ass out of it,
Yeah.
they kind of can all hang with each
Yes.
other in the gray and
Yes.
respect each other's views,
Yes. And
right?
they actually sort of encourage setting individual boundaries, which I sort of loved.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
Taylor was the one who said, "Why don't we just leave? If you need to leave, we can leave," and was calm about it. And I was like,
Yes.
that's a good friend in that moment. If you and I were
Yes.
out and you looked at me and said, "I'm really not comfortable with this," we would freaking leave. That's what friends do. We would just leave.
Yes. Like,
I
okay,
don't
we're
care how
good.
much I wanted to do the thing. You
Yes.
feeling like you have your integrity is more important to me.
Yes. Exactly.
So
And
the
then,
group's trying to figure out how to coexist and
yeah.
not pull each other around too much.
Yeah. And I think after Whitney left, they got better about it.
Well, yeah, because all right,
I
we'll talk
know.
about Whitney.
I know. So anyway, those are my thoughts on both Taylor and Dakota, Zach and Jen.
Yeah.
Let's switch to Whitney and Connor. Okay, I'm gonna just say a thing. I don't know if this is true.
Say the thing.
I think she wears the pants. I think
Yeah.
she is, if either one of them were to have a power and control dynamic, it would 100% be her.
It is interesting. I caught one interaction. I agree. I think she's an alpha.
Yes.
But there was this one really interesting thing when she dropped an F-bomb while she was talking to a friend on the phone, and he was like, "Babe," or whatever, and she goes, "Thank you." She said thank you, not like I'm sorry, not whatever. But it was like thank you,
Mm-hmm.
correcting me, and then went on to like cuss again in 2 seconds.
Well, I think it was because of the kids.
Oh, well, no, it was, but I just
Yeah.
thought that was so interesting that she said, thank you.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, what's
oh.
interesting is the women swear way more than the men.
Well, also though, can we talk about how some of them have been swearing for a really long time, and some of them this appears to be a recent addition to their
Yes.
lexicon because they don't know how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
which I find a little bit hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
It's like, let's fit in.
But some of
together.
them, they're fluent.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, Whitney is interesting. I just need to point out a few chaotic things about her. One, she takes no accountability. You even mentioned earlier she can dish it, but she can't take it.
Cannot take it.
It's so crazy. Like she will say
Mm-mm.
some of the most heinous stuff
She
and she'll get
also,
called
it's
out and then
this,
she'll cry.
she cries and then it's like just pitiful.
Hmm.
And the thing that makes me so mad about her is she gets this little smirk when
Yes.
something's going down. And it's like, you don't even care about these people. Like,
No.
I take no joy in people I care about having a fight. That's not like fun for me, you know?
Mm-mm.
She's just smiling and doing her thing. And when she gets nailed on it, then she's just dissolves. She also
Hmm.
called herself a pussy, which I have weird feelings about that as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So strange. So, yeah, she's an interesting one. At the very beginning, I will say first episode, her and Taylor were swapped
Yep.
in my brain because in the first episode, I was like, I think I like Whitney.
Yep.
She comes back from, Hawaii and she addresses this thing with her husband
Hmm.
and is being more honest. So at first I was like, I kind of like Whitney, and she gets upset that Taylor like stole her thunder. And I was like, Taylor kind of did,
Oh,
like,
Taylor totally stole her thunder. That was a real
yes,
thing that happened. Yes.
yes. So I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I can get behind her. And then the rest of it, I was like, Whitney's just awful.
Oh, I know. And
Awful.
Connor, her husband, granted, took accountability very well on
Yes.
screen for this, but he was on Tinder, messaging other women, sending pictures, all this kind of
Hmm.
stuff. That's part of why she went to Hawaii, was just to get
Hmm.
away from all of it.
Yeah.
And this is where I think Taylor being shady about the group really did affect the group. Like
Yes.
if our friends, let's say like our little, posse of friends that we hang out with, if one of them said, "Oh yeah, everybody was hooking up with everybody in our friend group," I would be royally pissed off
I'd
because
be
I would
super
be like,
pissed.
"Excuse me? Like
Hmm.
speak for yourself, lady."
Hmm.
Because Taylor didn't do that, it makes it really hard to know who was involved and who wasn't. So I can see Whitney being like, "I'm out. Like I'm not trying
Right.
to have this drama in my life."
Right.
And then when Whitney was sharing something really tender with the group in that first episode, she's finally sharing about Connor. And Taylor's like, "I'm pregnant, but I think I'm miscarrying." And it's just
Yes.
this whole, I mean, literally, you can't even manufacture that. It happened in like 1 second.
Literally.
And I do think that's who Taylor was. But then when she owned it later, she said, "I'm learning to just respond, like listen first and then relate instead of immediately relating." I thought that was self-aware.
Yes.
Her therapist did some good work with her on that.
What's so crazy about Taylor? Sorry, we keep going back to Taylor.
Hmm.
She did great work.
Hmm.
You can tell she did therapy.
Yep.
Whoever her DV therapist was, good job.
Yes. And I think we've got to call I mean, Whitney is kind of wannabe. She's wannabe Whitney. Like she just wants to be
Yeah,
Taylor.
she does. She does. She wants to be the ringleader. And that was the other interesting thing is Taylor kind of fell into being the leader of this group. She didn't like demand it. It just kind of fell
She's
to
the
her.
one who kind of started it.
Yeah, but it fell to her. That's what they say.
Yeah. Oh,
They're
yeah.
like she wasn't like controlling. She wasn't like this is my
No.
thing. People
Mm-mm.
just looked to her to lead it.
Well, and
And
then the group was
Whitney,
like, "Well, who's going to lead it now?" And they're kind of looking for the next person to fall into it.
yeah. And then
Absolutely.
Whitney tries to take over.
Do you know what it is? Whitney is a wannabe Taylor, but she wants to keep the moral high ground. So she wants to flirt
Mhm.
with the line, but also pretend that she's more Mormon than everyone else at the same time, which is not
Yes.
working well. So she's kind of as conflicted as Taylor was in the first episode.
Yeah.
That's sort of where Whitney ends up landing, which is so
Yeah.
weird.
Well, it's weird because, and I don't care about this for myself, but it's interesting that she's trying to take this moral high road because some of her videos, I'm like,
Hmm.
girl, you shouldn't be dropping it like that. Like,
Mm-mm.
if
Mm-mm.
you're claiming this moral high road of Mormonism,
Exactly. No, yes.
girlfriend, like you do you, but don't claim both.
Yes.
And she goes on to sell sex toys
Yes, I forgot about that.
to promote them. Which, like, I'm not against that. Like, you,
No, not at
cool.
all. But like,
Not at all.
stay true to whatever character you're trying to play. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because I can't keep
Yes.
track of them all.
Or to who you are. And that's the thing with her is
Yes.
it's constantly changing.
Yes. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So she drove me insane this whole show.
Yes.
She is the epitome of you are your own common denominator.
Yes.
Anywhere she goes, she would start something. Like there was
Yep.
never not drama around
Yep.
her.
She didn't go to Vegas, right? She didn't go
No,
because
thank
they were
God.
talking about quote unquote homesteading. They're going to go
Yeah.
like decide to be farmers now. And she goes, I'm not running away from anything. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
right.
okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting the last trip she goes on, which we alluded to at the very beginning, Demi rips her a new one.
Oh my gosh.
And I was all for it.
I know.
I was
Demi, my
like,
girl.
she actually became my favorite person
Yeah,
in
same.
their group that episode.
She's the one I would pick to hang out with.
Oh, absolutely. She's the one who's going to tell it to you straight. Her and Macy
Yes. Macy, ironically, okay, so Demi's pretty tight with Taylor. Macy's really tight with Whitney
and Taylor.
and Taylor, but Macy really can kind of be a little Switzerlandy because she's not afraid to say what she thinks to either one of them.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, shoot, Demi became one of my favorites because she laid into her
She can
and
pop off.
rightfully so. Yeah. I mean, it was rough. And then what was the icing on the cake? I don't know if you got this far, so I hope this
Mm.
might be a surprise for you. Icing on the cake with Whitney. I don't think you got this far. Is
Oh,
it
say
okay?
it anyway, because now I'm
Okay.
excited.
So she goes, did you see the part where she goes to dinner or lunch with her family?
No.
Okay. So she goes
Oh
to
no.
get food with her husband and her kids and her parents. Okay.
Oh
And
no.
she's like complaining about this trip that these girls went on to Vegas and how she's like, I'm so glad I didn't go, blah, blah, blah. Just like her normal Whitney self. They bring out this cake.
Oh no.
They cut through the middle of it. And she put her pregnancy pea stick in the cake. And she goes, well, I put the cap on it. There's no pee on it. And they're like, you pee on the stick. It
Oh,
splatters. And she put it
oh.
in the cake thinking people were going to eat the freaking cake
That is so extra. I've never heard of somebody putting the pea stick in the cake.
in the cake.
Put a rattle in there, put something else in
Yes,
there, but not your actual pea stick. That is nasty.
the actual pea stick.
Oh, that, what did her parents say?
They all were like, dude, this is so gross. But also, congrats, you're pregnant.
They're used to her by now. They're like, she's just extra.
Yeah. I mean, the mom was like, oh, you're pregnant. But her sister was like, dude, what?
Oh,
Oh yeah, it was just the icing on the cake with me for her. I was like, I can't with you.
mm. She's the kind of mean girl that I can't stand because it's like the
Hmm.
low key mean girl who
Hmm.
keeps her back to the wall. So she's not willing to really get into it
Mm-mm.
because she doesn't want to be responsible for anything, but
She's
she's
a drama.
messing.
So I call that the drama bombs. So they'll
Yes.
throw the bomb in and then try to leave.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Demi's like chasing her around the house. Well, what happened was this was I was so inspired by this moment because I've wanted to do this so many times in my life.
Hmm.
Taylor and Whitney are having this heart to heart, and they're all in a vacation rental house. So they're up
And
in like this
Taylor's
loft,
trying to be sweet. Like she's being very kind.
probably a little too nice to be frank.
Yes, I agree with
So
that.
both Whitney and Taylor are being kind of like nicey nice, and the girls downstairs can hear a little bit of what's going on.
Hmm.
And Demi's like, it's way too nice up there. And she goes up there and just blows it up because they weren't solving anything. They were
Hmm.
actually kind of glossing over everything. And Demi's had it. She's tired of hearing it from all different sides and whatever. She goes and blows it up. Now, part of why Demi blew it up, though, is because they came for her the night before, because Demi can also be a little bit of a pot stirrer.
Hmm.
The difference with Demi is she'll back it up, which I can
Hmm.
respect. But Whitney could not get away from Demi. Demi was yelling all over the house, and Whitney was just in a hell of her own making. She really
Hmm.
was.
That's so crazy.
I know. And Demi's yelling, I just blah, blah, blah. And so Whitney couldn't even get away from it. Demi's like making herself a coffee and yelling, and I'm like,
Oh,
hey,
she was
girl,
so
just
good.
go off then, I guess.
She was so good. Well, she left her alone for a second and then Whitney's crying in the closet. Like, come on.
Oh, I know.
And so Taylor goes in there, and that's when Taylor said that really sweet thing, like, I really hurt
I
you,
hurt you.
you
Yeah.
know? And Demi just
Oh,
runs in there again and just keeps going. I was like, good for you, dude.
but Jesse's a little chicken shit because Jesse's sort of like, yeah, and then watches.
I know.
I'm like, okay,
Well,
Jesse.
Jessie, here's what I think about Jessie. I actually really like her. I think she's all spice.
Yes.
She's all spice. And she supports what Demi says. I just don't think she can think of what Demi says.
Maybe not quite as bright as Demi. Also, Demi, I
I
don't
know.
think Jesse cares what's happening a whole lot. It's entertaining.
I
She's
think she
got her
loves the
job.
entertainment.
I think she loves entertainment, but she's not very emotionally invested. Demi
Mm-mm.
is more emotionally invested in the people. So
Yeah,
she may be popping off, but she actually does care about the group. Jesse's just here for a good time, I feel like.
exactly.
She's not all upset.
No. Yeah. Anyway, y'all, we won't spend too much more time on this show. But here's what I would say. Go watch it. It is like the epitome of quote unquote trash TV.
Yes. The
But
prerequisite for this one is you have to watch the series to understand what we're talking about, probably.
yes, yes. And I would encourage you guys to go watch it. It's just entertainment, if
Pure
anything
entertainment.
else. Um, Obviously, my husband was so funny. He was like, "You guys are doing an episode on that. Reality TV's all fake." And I'm like, "I get it, but some of these situations are real. Like Taylor's DV, real situation."
Well, and their real business was affected. Their
Yes.
social media content, all of that was affected by this, which
Yes.
is the livelihood of most of the women in the group.
Well, that's what I was going to say is the
Mm-hmm.
swinging was real, the
Yep.
DV was real, the
Yep.
divorces that happen in the show are real,
Yep.
right? And so some of it might be obviously producers, stirring the pot,
Oh, yeah.
but at the end of the day, there's still some real stuff that happened
Absolutely. And I
in
think it's a
this.
great, even if it was fictional, it's still a great
Yeah.
case to talk about in terms
Yeah.
of how we treat each other, how we navigate boundaries, and how things
Yes.
escalate over time.
And how we communicate. Here's a quick plug for our communication episode.
Oh, yeah,
Y'all. Taylor nails freaking assertive communication and empathy after she does her treatment,
that's true.
and if you watch this, you'll start to pick up on, I would encourage, here's what I would tell you guys to do. Go listen to our educate or our communication episode,
Yep.
watch the season, and then assess yourselves on communication,
Yeah.
toxic relationships, abusive relationships. We do that whole thing of toxic indirect abuse, direct abuse. We also have that episode,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like you guys could listen to some of our educational ones and go watch the show and start to name it yourselves.
Absolutely. And I would include purity culture in that too.
Yep.
Where's the line? We don't know how far is too far. And who says?
Yep.
Who says? If everything's kind of relative, I just, to close this out, have you ever heard of a derfing Mormon
No.
or the
Oh
Provo
no.
push?
No. A
It's
what?
dry humping. The Provo push, like Provo, Utah.
uh,
Oh my God. But
I'm,
apparently
s-
derfing is dry humping between church members, is derfing.
I am scarred with these terms.
It's magical though, but this is what happens, you know? This is what happens. Thanks for joining us. And
Yeah.
we have one other reality TV rabbit hole we're going to go down in the near future, which we will tell
Yeah.
you about with some prerequisites,
Yes.
so you'll know what's going on. But keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Something.
There's some there's some nugget in here for us.
Some
Don't
truth to that.
don't swing with your friends' husbands. Not a great
Yeah.
plan. I mean, I think it's real hard, like Nat said, to be in a monogamous relationship and all of a sudden introduce a new element and not have it ruin the relationship. I haven't seen that done ever
Right. Well,
will.
and for that to happen because you're like, oh, well, we're so healthy and happy. Let's just do this. It's usually
Yeah,
like, we're not healthy and happy.
I haven't seen that.
Same.
Now, that doesn't mean people can't have potentially healthy, non-traditional relationships, especially if they're communicating, and that's what they choose to do. But this whole thing, does not.
Yeah.
All of this is reactive. All
Yes.
of this behavior is reactive behavior.
Yes. Yes.
All of it.
Yep.
So, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
As always.
Bye, forensic friends. I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.